Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Marilyn, and if you're new here, thanks for joining me on Making with Marilyn. If you're returning, thanks so much for coming back. Now, typically on my videos, I like to do step by step and show you exactly how to complete a project. Well, today's video is a little bit different. Today's project is more of an inspiration video. In today's project, I made mainly the top for my new scissors holder. Let me show you that. It is so cute. Now this top material, this is something that I cut with my X-Tool P2 CO2 laser. It is a clear acrylic with a sublimation coating on the bottom. So it does require a CO2 laser. However, if you want to do something similar to this, you could use something like a Unisub board. That is a press board that has a sublimation coating on top. That's something you could cut with your diode laser. Even though I'm not going to go into the measurements that I use for this because everyone's needs would be different, if you're looking for some inspiration on something new to make with your laser, I hope you'll stick around. The first thing it will do is we'll look at the sublimation design on my computer. Then I'm going to show you how I use my X tool to cut out the material. After that, we'll do the sublimation. Here's the design that I put together for my scissors holder. This is an image that I got off of Creative Fabrica. I added my name to it, and then I put a white offset around it so that you could see my name. I don't want my name to really stick out much. I want those flowers to be the spotlight, but I did want to put it on there. I offset it to the left so that you could see all of this beautiful pink flower. With the design, I made it 0.1 inches larger in the height and the width than what I'll be sublimating on. I like to make it larger so that you know you're not going to have any white lines showing on that sublimation blank. I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a little bit. Now, a lot of the times you will hear people say, always mirror your designs when you're doing sublimation. This is one of the few exceptions where you don't, because this design is actually going to come up through the bottom of the blank and you'll see it from the top. So I'm not going to mirror this design. But I do need to rotate the design, otherwise anything you see off this paper, it's not going to print. So let's go ahead and select the image, go up to Object, and rotate 90 degrees. It doesn't matter if it's clockwise or counterclockwise. At this time I'm ready to print. So I hit Command P on my keyboard. I'm going to use my Epson EcoTank 15000 series printer. I have sublimation ink in that instead of the ink that came with it. I'll go to Page Setup, make sure it's on one-sided. I go to Color, make sure it's in color. Then I go to Advanced to make sure my quality is on high. Now I'm ready to print. I'm going to go ahead and open up the design that I made for my scissors holder. It's right here, and I just designed this by trial and error. Basically, I tried different sizes of slots for my different types of scissors. I did prototypes, and then I did a final wood prototype before I'm going to cut into this more expensive acrylic. So we'll go ahead and open this. Now I need to turn on the X tool so that we can see the acrylic down on the bed of the laser. That way we can move this exactly where we need it. You can probably hear it in the background coming on and doing the startup. Let's see if it's connected already. Okay, it says it's not connected, so you can go right here to the device settings, click on that, and then it'll look for it. Here it is. Let's go ahead and click on it. Now that we can see the acrylic in there, let's go ahead and move this up so we don't waste acrylic. Now I did some test cuts on a piece of this acrylic, and I already know what I want to use. I'll show you that in just a minute. But before we go there, let's take some close-up looks to make sure we're good. So we're going to go right here where it says Close Shot. Let's click on that, and then let's just take a picture over in this corner. That looks pretty good. Now let's take one in this other corner. We'll click on it again, put the camera where I want it, and now it's coming over to this corner to show a close-up of it. All right, that's a little too close for my comfort. So I'm going to go ahead and move this down just a little bit. Then also the sides are going to be waste. You can tell they're not large enough to do anything. And I feel like the way the camera's looking, see how it's lighter there? It's because the camera's in the middle and it's at an angled view. So let's take one more close look at that. Okay, we can see it's perfectly fine. This machine has two cameras. It has the large camera that looks at the whole bed, and then it has a second camera by the laser head. When you use that close-up shot feature, it moves over to what you want to see and you get a much more accurate picture. Now the settings that I'm using for this, it's 6mm white acrylic. When you tell the machine that you want to cut it, it puts it to a power of 100 and a speed of 10. So it's really slowed down because it has fairly thick acrylic to get through. Now before I can cut this, I need to actually turn this on. Notice that the output is off. That's because earlier I was doing some test cuts and I didn't want this to cut before I was ready. So I turned the output off so it wouldn't cut. Now we're going to turn it on and now we can process this. So we go right down here to process, click on that. It's going to show us a picture and the path that the laser will take. If I like that, I click on start. Because this is high power and slow speed, it gives you these warnings, but I'm okay with that, so I'll say okay, process. I like to hold the acrylic in place to make sure the cut is good before moving it. That way, if I need to, I can reprocess the cut. Here's the sublimation blank, and this cut very, very nicely. This is the top of the acrylic, and the top is actually clear. If I turn this, you can probably see that. And then the back of it is the actual sublimation blank. It's the sublimation coating. Because there's so many holes in this, and you'll see in a minute, I'm going to have ink around the outside too. I'm going to protect the pad of my heat press with 2 pieces of paper, or today I have 1 piece, but it's folded over. Here's my design, and I made my design slightly larger than my sublimation blank so that I wouldn't accidentally have any uncovered areas around the perimeter and have a white streak. All right, let's go ahead and lay this down. And I want to be able to see a tiny bit of the ink all the way around it. And I'm going to have the blank as far this way as possible because of my name so low. All right, I'm happy with that placement. Now I'm going to put a couple of pieces of tape on this. I'm not going to put a lot of tape on this because as acrylic gets really hot, it can bend, it can warp, it can soften, and I don't want the impression of the tape over here in the main part of this. I don't know that I'm going to have an impression of it. This is pretty thick acrylic, and this is going to be the downside, so I might not, but just to be careful, I'm only using those 2 pieces of tape. Now we're going to flip this over and have paper side up. And then I want to make sure that the blank is basically in the middle of my press. So I'm feeling the outside of my blank, not the paper, but the blank, and putting it as close to the center as I can. I think that's pretty good. I like to have things in the center, especially when they're thick, because if they're not, it can make your heat press or the top platen of your heat press go down in an uneven fashion. Also, I'm going to press this for 40 seconds this way, then I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, 40 more seconds, rotate it again another 90 degrees, and then that'll be it. So a total of 120 seconds. I'm using my HTV AutoPress. It's the AutoPress 2. I have the pressure set at 110 and the temperature at 360 degrees. I have my timer on 40 seconds because of rotating it. So let's go ahead and press this. Now I want one more piece of paper on top just to protect the top platen of my heat press. Because hot acrylic is so pliable, I brought this over as flat as possible, and then I'm just putting this ceramic tile upside down on it. Now this is a very smooth ceramic tile, maybe porcelain, I'm not sure which, but you do want to have a smooth texture if you use a tile. And I like to leave this on here and give it some good pressure for at least 15 seconds. It really pulls that heat out, and then it keeps that pliable acrylic flat. Okay, I want to flip this over without my paper shifting. So let's see if I can get under this. Flip it over so we can take a look at it. That looks really pretty. Now, it's not going to look quite this way once the paper comes off of it, because that paper is giving it a white background. So it's not going to be quite that bright. But what I want to do is I want to look and see if it looks like it's sublimated pretty well by looking at the paper, and I think it did. So let's go ahead and take this off. I think that did a great job. That is so cute. I do feel like I see a little bit of ghosting in my name. So maybe when that press went up and down, or maybe when I turned it, the paper got shifted just slightly. It's not bad, but I can tell that it did shift a little bit, especially on this far left side. This looks great, but this did shift a little bit. That is so pretty. After this cooled down all the way, it was a little bit warped. It was bending this way. So I decided to flip it over, put it under the press for 20 seconds, and then hold down my tile on it again. Well, because I flipped it over, it got some of the texture of the Teflon sheet in the top of it. You see that? That is not the way it's meant to be. It's still very pretty, but that's not the way it's meant to be. So I redid it, and because I pressed this before, doing 2 sets of 40 seconds each, and there was no warping, I decided to make another one, and that's what I did. But notice the big color difference. When I pressed it for 40 seconds 3 times, here's what the ink release looked like. When I pressed it for 40 seconds 2 times, I didn't get any warpage, but that's the color release of it. So I guess you have to decide, Do I want to press it longer and get more vibrant colors, but risk having warpage? Or do I want to press it just a couple of times at 40 seconds each, have it be less vibrant, but not have the warpage? Honestly, I'm not sure which one of these I'll use. I like them both. They're both very different. But this one does have that texture from my mistake on the top. Always before I had just done smaller things. I did tumbler toppers, things like that. Over a large sheet like this, you're going to get more distortion because it is a larger sheet. If you can find a pre-made box and just add a couple of supports for the acrylic to sit on, that is a lot easier. But I live in a small town with almost no stores, so I made mine out of a piece of scrap wood that we had in the garage. After I cut out my 4 pieces of wood, I went ahead and I glued them together with some wood glue, and then I used clamps to hold it together securely. After I let that dry for about an hour, I used the little pieces of wood that you saw me cut out, and I added them with wood glue to the inside, and then I added clamps to those as well. Here's basically what that wood looks like before you cut it. I placed those pieces at a height so that my acrylic would sit just below flush with the top of the box. Then after the whole thing dried, I spray painted it with white spray paint. This is an example of the sublimation board that you could use if you use a diode laser. This would allow you to sublimate a picture on the front. The back is just this pressed wood. If you don't do sublimation, you could always just use a piece of stained wood or a piece of unfinished wood. You could paint it or stain it to your liking. Now that you've seen the video, what do you think? Do you think this is something you'd try? I hope you will. Thank you so much for joining me today, and until my next video, bye-bye.